kilometer. You got 4 individuals.
You can make it here in America if you're willing to try.
I'm with you, the American people.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
Now we are in danger of being swamped by Muslims.
G'day. Welcome to the Conspiracy Podcast. My name's Josh Wade. On this week's episode, I've got what I believe to be Australia's very own Milo Yiannopoulos. His name is Nick Johnson, and Nick emailed me earlier on in the week wanting to come on the show. He happens to live here on the Gold Coast, and he said to me he wrote an article that went to his university magazine called "A Little Bit of a Riot." It was, I think it was like an anti-feminist type article talking about gender equality. And I read it and I thought, great, if you want to come on, let's have a chat. He came over, we had a great discussion. I was thoroughly impressed. And I think it's a discussion that you guys are really going to enjoy. If you're into, I mean, what did we cover? We covered like 9/11, but we mainly covered the gender stuff first. Trump, he's a big Trump supporter. I mean, you just watch for yourself, give it 5-10 minutes. I'm sure it'll suck you in. Well, it's not going to suck you off. If you want to help us out on Patreon, though, I will suck you off if you do that. Head over to our Patreon site. If you feel like you can help us out with a couple of dollars a month, it does really help us a lot. We appreciate all of our Patreon people. There's a lot of yous, but we want to thank you heaps, so thanks so much. Yeah, if you can help us out there. If you want to listen to the show on iTunes or Android, you can by simply just going over and subscribing to the podcast through any podcast app. Does help us out a lot, and we'd love to hear a review or, you know, whatever. If you can't do that, just fucking like it or fucking comment down below your opinions throughout the podcast. I'd love to hear it. That's the best part about doing this, is getting you guys involved. So please feel free, write whatever you want. Call me a cunt or say something intellectual. I'd love to hear it. If there's something that you want me to cover, you can talk to us through Twitter or Instagram. Just leave us a comment anywhere. Interact with me on there. I'll be replying to all of you throughout the day. So head over to the Instagram at Josh Wade with 2 E's, or the Twitter stuff, which is at Josh Wade Comedy. The links are down below. And go follow us on there. Otherwise, this is my chat with what is soon to be Australia's very own Milo Yiannopoulos, Nick Johnson. Enjoy the fucking episode. G'day and welcome to the Conspiracy Podcast. My name's Josh Wade. Today I'm a little bit fucking sick. I've got some cum in my nose, but I've got Nick Johnson on the show. G'day, how you going?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. How are you?
Good. Now, Nick, is this your first time doing something like this?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Is.
Don't be nervous. We're not going to attack you. Now,
Right.
Nick, you sent me an email probably like 2 days ago through Facebook. So here you go. If you want to get on the show, this is how you fucking do it. You did well.
Cheers.
I appreciate it. So I'm just going to read out your message just to preface to everyone what this conversation is going to be about. You said, "G'day, mate. I'm loving the Conspiracy Podcast." Thanks.
Not a problem. Easy way to get on, just give a compliment.
I just finished watching your episode with Brienne, and you mentioned in there you'd love to do an episode with a Reclaim Australia person. Now, when I read that part, I thought, fuck, we've got one.
Sorry.
They're a lot rarer than that. You said, well, I'm not as quite as cooked. I did almost cause a riot on my uni campus this week by publishing an article. So you posted an article about your problem with feminism. As a result, I've decided to start a blog and post this. I've got some stuff about refugees coming. I'm a complete conspiracy theorist. Bush 100% did 9/11, which we'll get into later. I'm a loyal member of the Trump train and would be amazingly keen to have a chat with you if you have some time. Thanks in advance. Now, I read that and I was like, saw that you were on the Gold Coast, and I was like, well, great. We don't have anyone this week, and we've got a few episodes coming up, but nothing this week. So we're here to chat some heavy ideology, I would say.
Chat some shit.
Yeah. So, for anyone that doesn't know, who are you? Where you from? You know, what's your story?
Just 18-year-old kid from Rocky in central Queensland, moved down to the Gold Coast last year, started studying at uni, developed some opinions, and was given a platform where I could share them.
Yep.
Earlier in the week, just published an article in our student magazine about my problem with feminism, and I think where the extreme aspects of the movement are taking things a bit too far and then causing the entire thing to be discredited. Caused a little bit of controversy, to say the least.
What happened?
Look, overall, there was support and there's people against it. So it ended up being like, started off with a group of people having a secret group chat that wasn't very, very secret. Wanted to complain to the university administration, and we were like, no, that's free speech. You can't really stop me from doing that. And they just weren't really impressed that white male was talking about feminism.
This chat's going to be great. Okay.
Yeah, that's where it all started, and that sort of spiraled from there. We sort of had to run a little bit of damage control, sorted everything out, cleaned it up a little bit, and then, yeah, here we are.
So we'll get into your opinions on feminism coming up, but obviously you didn't just, don't just have an opinion on feminism. Like, people get to a point there. So you've obviously got opinions on politics and all different spectrums of...
Yeah, reasonably heavily.
Okay. Have you always been that way?
No, not really. Hey, Rocky's pretty bloody... It's pretty nothing much.
That's okay. That's
there.
just...
So,
it doesn't matter which part of the dirt you grew up on.
That's like... Not very much gets talked about in the realm of politics. There, it's sort of like we don't really care. An election comes up, we're just like, we'll vote for the biggest dickhead, and just see where it goes. And then sort of moving down and to the Gold Coast, and then learning, I suppose, through uni and that sort of thing. It sort of developed ideologies and just sort of started to question things like in the school that you're taught, and you realise, oh, hang on, that teacher taught her ideology, not the facts of it. And it sort of just started opening my mind up to that sort of stuff. Started get me questioning things along the lines.
Questioning the mainstream narrative, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So were you and your family like quite involved in politics? Like, did you go to rallies, or did your parents ever like support a certain side, or
not at all? Like, I think
so it wasn't, you weren't exposed to that. Yeah,
so like, I think you said like the other week or something, like, you grow up and your parents like, this is who we vote for, and that thing. When I was growing up, I was sort of completely like, I 100% respect my parents for doing this. They were like, I remember like when I was like 12 or something, an election was happening. I was like, oh, who do you vote for? Yeah. And they said, I'm not telling you. We don't tell you who we vote for. You can make up your own mind on who you vote for.
Good on you.
So that sort of didn't expose me to it, and I was like, okay, well, I've got plenty of time before I need to really figure that out, and that sort of didn't indoctrinate anything in me as well, and that me for my own opinions.
That's a real big problem, I think, like the indoctrination of it, because I remember, I don't know if I said it on that podcast that you listened to, but my grandparents who I grew up with, they grew up in like Labour land, so like Junie, like down where and at the time I can understand where their concerns were and why they had allegiance to that side, because I mean back then it probably had much more of an impact, whereas today now, and I will preface, because there is a difference between the parties. It's easy to say, there's dickhead, they're both the same team,
100%.
and they're not, because there's obviously differences, but I think nowadays more than ever before they do seem to entwine a little bit more closer. Okay, so was there like a catalyst for you? Was there something that like an event in history or something that made you
start to
question
stuff?
What was the red pill for you?
So it's sort of little dose of it started actually in like year 11 and 12 at school. One of my teachers was proclaimed feminist, and sort of had a few little bouts and arguments in class about that sort of thing.
You were that kid.
I was that kid. I was a little fucking shit. So we like had a little few arguments, that sort of thing, and like she'd say things, I'm just like, no, that's just not true. And then like she sprouted out she was a first or second year teacher or something like that, and they sprouted out the whole, I get paid the same amount as a male teacher with one less degree than me. She'd gone and like she did a degree, then did a postgraduate teaching degree or something like that. I said, yes, but you're both second year teachers. You're doing the same job. Who cares if he's got a PhD or you've got a PhD? If you're a second year teacher, you're getting paid to be a second year teacher. And she's like, no, I get paid less. And I was like, bullshit. So I contacted the school administration. I was like, what's your gender pay gap statistics? And the school sent back and said, we don't have any discrepancy between people of the same jobs. So I printed that out and took it to class the next day, and I was like, here you go.
Could you see though, because I understand where you're going with that, because I was a smart ass as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But can you see how, like, if I was that teacher, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if I was that teacher, if a 16-year-old, if I'd had an argument with a 16-year-old, one, I'd be like, fuck you, you know nothing about the world yet. And really, you don't.
100%.
But to then have that kid call up the school and get that information, then bring it back, could you understand how some people would find that really quite, like, not psychopathic, but almost like that's you've really gone out of your way to
Yeah, 100%.
do
And
that.
they're probably sitting there going, why don't you put this much effort into your schoolwork?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a lot of effort to
But
do.
like, there's always like stubbornness about me. I'm just like, no, I know you're wrong.
Yes,
like,
okay.
you know, they've got to get through to you. And then sort of they sort of realize to me, like, they're teaching a philosophy, like they're trying to indoctrinate their sort of views on you. And like, if you're in another classroom, it was a different sort of thing. And I was like, you know, I'm not going to let these other 24 kids sit here and be like, oh yeah, that's the normal thing. Like, and don't like. At least me going out and going, oh look, this is something that doesn't support what you say, gives them a sort of a view. Oh, we can form our own opinions and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So talking about the pay gap thing, this is an interesting one because I mean, maybe about a year ago, I never really questioned. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because essentially at the end of the day, I know that I am, and this is not guilt. I'm not being cucked into thinking this. It's clearly I'm a white straight male. I've got a lot of fucking advantages, and if I was to go back in time, I would be exactly the fucking same if we all had a choice, right? This is not my fault. This is just the way I was born, and I've sort of come into the world with just one little step ahead most people, which is totally okay. With the gender pay gap thing, when I found out that most of the statistics that are brought forward for that are sort of skewed, which is okay because you can also, I always say, you can find research to support any argument.
Exactly.
But it made a lot of sense to me when it sort of went, well, it's not based on pay, it's not based on a wage, it's based on the salary. And obviously women go into different jobs than men. There is like legitimate things where they, you know, women have children and they take time away from work. And these are all reasonable arguments. This is not like
100%.
a misogynistic thing, which can be skewed.
The only thing that I'll give them with the maternity leave, I refuse to let people make that argument, like from a male's point of view, because they did bring
Just
in...
explain it to me, because I'm
no,
very
of course.
quite new.
No, they bring in, like, so females have got maternity leave, they can take X amount of days off, whatever, for their kids, but males also have paternity leave. That's the same value. So it works both ways, and that's like sort of thing where my view is, you know, equality of opportunity for everyone.
Yep.
So females had extra leave, and then the males went, oh, hang on, I want to spend some time with my kids.
Yeah, fair enough.
So they went, okay, well, we can sort something out.
Yep.
You know, being civil got somewhere.
Yeah. What about, though, so, like, let's just leave the wage thing for a second. What about, though, because I totally agree with that. I think, like, you know, if you're a woman cleaner or a male cleaner, you're getting paid the same. There are discrepancies in there, but overall, I think it's mostly...
I think most of the discrepancies come from, like, incentives and that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah. But at face value, most of it's pretty much the same.
Exactly.
But then when you look at, like, female... not necessarily sport, because there's always that argument of, like, you know, women's AFL or tennis and stuff like that. It doesn't draw the same amount of eyes that, you know, the men's sport does, which is a total other argument as to why that is. But they're getting paid on how much they bring to, you know, eyes to the screen or whatever like that. But then when you look at Hollywood and stuff like that, there is, you know, and I've looked into this, there's a major discrepancy, huge discrepancy between, say, a top-tier female actor versus Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that? Because I would say they'd be bringing in
I'd agree
figures.
that's an issue, but like, see, when we talk about pay gap, you've got to look at it holistically, and that's like with any like controversial, contentious argument. You can't really take the extreme and then apply it to the general.
Okay,
so you've got to
fair
take
enough.
a look at holistically and be like, okay, well, on average, the ordinary person is fine. There are and even in business, the top level executives of businesses, the men are paid somewhat more than women.
Definitely.
And then that comes back down to experience, because traditionally men have had more longer in the workforce, so that sort of works out. So over time you'll see that decreasing. But I think, definitely there's that in Hollywood and that sort of thing. I think that's sort of an issue that they need to address themselves. I don't really think it involves government intervention. I think it's sort of down to the free market's ability to sort that out themselves.
And it is quite a free market
100%.
thing in Hollywood.
Definitely.
Those sorts of jobs, whether it's sports or whatever, yeah.
And I mean, if they're going to pay a woman less than a man for an acting job, why? Give me a reason.
Yeah.
And tell me a reason. If you can justify with a reason, then sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But if
I
you're going to do it willy-nilly...
I can't see why Scarlett Johansson would get paid $10 million to do the same job as a male. And, you know, just knowing like the figures that they make anyway, actors make... None of them should be making that sort of money anyway, like regardless.
It's ridiculous.
So I don't even know why we're having that conversation. But so what... You said in your email there that you're on the Trump train, which is great because that's going to trigger so many people.
I love it.
So this is what I want to hear about. When and why?
So I think, last year I sort of reasonably politically apolitical still, didn't really have any sort of opinion on it. But then it came down to just watching it go along, and then I sort of researched political philosophies and that sort of thing, and realised that I could fall more to a conservative than a socialist sort of alternative and that sort of thing. So it went towards Donald. And everything...
Republicans or Donald?
Republican Party, but then Donald had... There's one strange thing that happened with him.
Because he's quite a Democrat. He's quite a Democrat. Well, he even said he was a Democrat.
He's quite liberal.
He's
in his
New Yorker.
Views. Absolutely. Yeah. But the thing that, with most of my sort of extreme views have come from is where the more that one side pushes their argument to the extreme and then makes a big kick and fuss about it, the more it pushes me away from it. Yeah. So the more the media and the mainstream media was hammering Donald Trump's a bad person, he did this, I was just really? So I started doing my own research and you look it up and it's well, he, yes, he did say that, but he said this and this before and this after. So in context, it made perfect sense. And it sort of worked out that, they were making him out to be a bigger devil than he actually was. And I just thought, so give him a fair go. He what he says is actually quite reasonable and fair to an extent. He said some pretty bad stuff. Do agree with that.
Do you think he's a provocateur? Do you think he says things
definitely
to draw eyes to him and then he explains it in a more reasonable way?
He's a TV personality, of course he is. Yeah. He does that provocative sort of stuff and then people go, oh, what did you do that for? But he gets his name known and then people who don't know anything go and vote for him, or he basically just got a cult following in America from it. But the things that he said weren't entirely wrong. No. He his book, Art of the Deal, he is literally, if you read that, it's his election campaign was word for word from the book.
Yes, I did notice, I went through and I had a similar experience to you, but mine's changed since then altogether. I don't necessarily watch the news, but I obviously saw there was a clear bias, which in my own mind at the time, I was like, well, look, they clearly want Hillary to be president. Everyone's saying that. So
secret society.
Yeah, but the other thing is that you've really got to understand that there's secret societies, and not necessarily secret societies, but there's power structures behind Trump as much as there is Clinton. They're just two different teams,
and they're completely separate industries. Like Trump's is from the business industry, theirs is from sort of a lobbyist secret.
Yes, sort of and weird shit on that side, but we can go down that.
Definitely.
But then above those people, you've got other people that really control shit, like bankers and stuff like that.
Yeah, build a bank.
And they're controlling both sides because, it's in business. If you play both sides, you'll always win. You'll always get through the same agenda. So far in Trump's presidency, I saw a great meme on Facebook, which was candidate Donald Trump versus President Donald Trump. And I seem to find that there's a clear
discrepancy between what he said he's going to do and what he has done.
Things that he's going to do, and then basically he's flip-flopped on massive things, with Syria, with Cuba,
100%.
With a bunch of different things, and it almost seems like he is George Bush 3.0. You had Obama, which was 2.0.
Yep.
It seems to be a similar agenda that is taking place.
I think that comes down to two things. It comes down to his whole deal process where you go for the most extreme flamboyant thing and then work back to a medium. You can see that with the wall.
Yes.
He goes, we're going to build a big wall and Mexico's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And now he's like, oh, we're going to build a wall. We might put some solar panels on it, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the power structures above, as much as he tries to negate them from happening, they're always going to control stuff.
I kind of like to refer to the president as almost like the Ronald McDonald. He's the mascot, really. Yeah. He's not got too much of a say. And it shows. Do you think he is experienced enough to be in that role? Or can you not? I can notice when I've watched him, I'm like, this guy doesn't, he's out of his depth. And I think he knows he's out of his... He's going to learn. He will learn over 4 years.
Politically, I think it's because it's different, I don't know, than to Australia, because obviously they've got a different system. I think obviously he hasn't had any political experience, but
That's okay. I'm
but
not saying
what he
that
can
you can't.
like his business experience and that sort of stuff, I think, can translate very well through into it. Like he's got the ability to negotiate and talk and all that sort of stuff, and then he just bloody done hire advisors to tell him what sort of political stuff to do. Or
Do you want to get into the advisors? Because that's another interesting one. Family.
Yeah.
People have a lot of problem with that, and I can
100%.
understand that.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand why that'd be an issue, but then again, I can see, why it's sort of a beneficial thing. If you have your family in there, you can have a pretty big, like a reasonable amount more control over what happens or where leaks go and where things are. Because if you've got just a random person that looks good on a resume in your media team or on your policy committee, there's nothing stopping them going to the other side and leaking it. But if it's a family member like Jared, he's got more of a loyalty and sort of allegiance to it.
But have you really looked into Jared?
Oh, he's not an upstanding bloke.
No, I mean, the thing is his family are like the Kushners. They've donated millions upon millions. During Hillary Clinton's run for New York senator, or I think that's what it was. Yeah. They donated more money to her than anything else. Yeah. They are. Him and Ivanka are almost the textbook definition of a New York liberal.
Yeah, 100%.
And you've got, Ivanka up there talking about feminism and the pay gap and stuff like that. What do you think of that? If you're a Trump train guy,
support Donald, not Ivanka. I think that, it comes down to her. I don't really agree with what she says either, to be honest. I like what Donald has to say and how he presents himself and how he does it, and the stuff he says is real. It's the same as Pauline in Australia. The stuff they say is real and it resonates with the real person.
But do you think with a Pauline Hanson, I watch her and I go, there's reasonable things as to what people obviously have these concerns. I just don't think that she's the right person to be discussing these. When I see a photo of Pauline with her feet up against a fucking heater, wearing a Queensland jersey, I'm like, this is not the person that we need talking about immigration.
The thing with Pauline is she's got the right ideas, she just doesn't have the right brain to talk them. Okay,
I won't say yes or no to the right ideas thing. What are your views on immigration then, and Pauline and that whole Trump Pauline thing? Because I almost think Pauline's an insult to Trump by comparing them. Because she's much crazier than Trump.
Much crazier, and she's been doing it for 10 times as long.
Yeah, okay.
She's already had a crack. I think that there is something that needs to be done about immigration in Australia, in terms of who does come in. I'm not saying stop it altogether. I'm not saying kick everyone out. I'm saying we need to look at what's going on and who we take in and why. Tony Abbott actually said it perfectly just after he got stabbed in the back and ousted by Malcolm. He went over to the Margaret Thatcher Museum in England and made a speech to England in there, and he said, speaking about immigration, he said, the problem that we have in Australia, or the issue that we face in Australia and in the UK as well, is that we have a moral obligation to take refugees fleeing persecution. But the issue that we face is these people have crossed multiple borders to get to us. So they're now no longer fleeing persecution. So the question's then raised, do we have a moral obligation to take them? In some situations, there may be a reason why we should. And then in others, it's more of they're now looking for a better life to try and do something. And the thing I think that creates a lot of unrest with immigration, why Pauline gets a lot of attention from what she says, is because people resonate with it. If you're gonna the thing I say is, if you're gonna come over here, if your culture's so bad that you need to leave it and come here, why do you want to bring that culture with you?
This is where I will step in and go, it's clearly the culture is way different to ours, and I totally agree when people go, there is going to be a cultural clash for sure. There's just not when Pauline Hanson says Islam is not compatible with Australian culture, it isn't. When you look at their
word for word from the Quran, 100%.
It doesn't necessarily. You're not going to just throw them together like Lego and they'll click.
Yeah, exactly.
There's going to be something, but
you can make it work.
You can make it work, but I don't think they're fleeing because of them hating their culture. I think they're fleeing because it's us, it's NATO, it's people that are setting up these false wars and putting in rebels and funneling money and stuff to these rebels to cause wars for us to go in and then bomb the shit out of these countries, right? I think it comes back down to a much more materialistic thing, and what we're seeing is, as a result of that, is like a side effect of, well, the side effect is having all these misplaced people. Like, I think the root, like, I really believe that if Pauline Hanson has or Donald Trump or people like that have a concern with immigration and stuff like that, then wouldn't the root cause for immigration be the fact that they're trying to escape the fact that we and other countries as well on the other side are fighting back and forth? I feel like the only solution to stopping that and letting them be able to live where they want to live and live the culture they want to live in is if we stop fucking intervening in their shit and just let them...
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The only reason that, like,
Why is no one talking about that?
I agree with that. I didn't really think of the immigration as in us displacing them until you just said that. That's actually a fairly reasonable point. I think no one's talking about that because the same reason that America went into Iraq in the first place, because they want the oil. They want to exploit it for its economic
even
resources.
More than that, though.
Oil, the money,
more.
everything.
Oil, I think oil is just the ice tip.
It's a reason, and then they can find other reasons.
Who do you think runs everything?
Saudis. No,
they've got a reasonable.
They have a pretty big slice in the Middle East in terms of the Western world.
Who else has a slice in the Middle East?
America, Russia, China, every NATO superpower, basically.
Israel?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, Israel does. Israel's definitely not impressed with where their culture has gone and where their people have been done with that, so they kind of want that to go back to where it was. And yeah, definitely.
They are on occupied land. This is what I'm finding really fascinating, learning about this for the past few years. And it's like a weird thing because you're not really supposed to talk about it because, you know, people will throw out anti-Semitism straight away. But I think it's a very logical discussion to have that you've got a group of people that basically, you know, the Palestinians that suffered the consequences of a war that didn't even involve them. So World
definitely,
War II.
100%.
And that was obviously the catalyst to everything that's happening. That was the first domino to fall, because before then, I mean, I'm not saying the Middle East was perfect, but I mean, they've always been sort of fighting. It's always been a volatile region, but
the fight was internal until we made it involve everyone.
Yes, yeah, until we got involved.
I think they would have sorted themselves out if we had not have got involved. Like, I think, sort of, like, everything happens for a reason. Like,
I don't think it would be any worse. It
wouldn't be any worse.
No.
Might not be any better, but I think it'd be contained to themselves and, like, really apart from trying to exploit their economic resources and that sort of stuff. What reason do we really have to go in there?
I only read an article, and then from that I went and read a bunch more about the biggest exporter in diamonds is Israel.
Yep.
And I'm like, and I have got a lot of friends actually that are South African, and that's where it's taking place. They seem to have so much more of a monopoly than what most people expect. When I was in high school, I didn't even know what Israel was.
I was the same. Ago. I was just like, what's this shit?
It's such a silent player in the grand scheme of this world and what's going on.
Definitely, and I think they escape a lot of, like you said, a lot of the criticism, a lot of the media attention in fear of the anti-Semitism claims because they're primarily Jews. If anyone has a go at them, they're like, "Oh, you're an anti-Semitic."
I don't think it has anything to do with Jewish people at all. I think it's more of a political ideology that's associated to a group of people that just happen to be Jewish, which is Zionism, or Rothschild Zionism, which is, I mean, go look into that because that's a whole can of worms.
That's a new rabbit hole.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to change the subject before I get fucking assassinated. You said in your email that you believe Bush did 9/11. I mean, do you actually believe he did it, or do you think like
I think it was a military complex or
Pardon?
something? It was like definitely internal in America, whether it was him explicitly or his administration or the whole industrial military complex. It was definitely an inside job, though.
I can't accept the fact that he did. Like, he was dumb as dog shit. He wasn't behind the computer orchestrating that, but
no, but they puppeteered him into doing it.
Well, I think it says a lot about his father going in there originally and then them finding out in the first Gulf War that, I mean, it was all basically a lie. There was obviously things happening there, but they amped the shit out of it to give the Americans a reason, talking about babies in incubators, and
weapons of mass destruction that never existed.
Yeah, well, that's the argument I find quite interesting. Is the exact same people, the heads of state and the people in defence and that, the same people that told us what happened on 9/11, the official story of what happened, were also the people that came out and said there's weapons of mass destruction, and then came away and said, oh, there wasn't. And Iraq had nothing to... Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11.
Exactly. And I think, like, the thing that...
Why isn't that, like... Why... This is what makes me angry, and this is probably just me, but why aren't we really knuckling down on that one day and what happened on that day? Because that day explains... And we'll never actually know what fully happened, because there's just so many theories out there.
Yeah, definitely.
But there is a paper trail. There are so many mistakes that happened on that day. Most people don't even know that 3 towers went down on 9/11.
Tower 7 or whatever it was. Yeah,
World Trade Center.
And how did that one fall when nothing hit it? And it
Well,
felt exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. It did fall in free speed, and it's the first building in history to come down due to a fire, and it shouldn't have come down. Like, that's a whole other can of worms. But most people aren't even aware that 3 towers came down. Most people today don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And that's okay.
I think what caused, like, people to ask questions is like, America's a country that will investigate everything, and they'll spend so much money investigating everything, but 9/11 is sort of just like, oh, yeah, we won't talk about that.
I think O.J. Simpson or something,
Yeah.
some ridiculous thing, it was like some random trial had spent more money
Yeah, it would have been O.J. Simpson, 100%. Than
what they did investigate 9/11.
Yeah.
And it was so quickly, and they were already, before they'd even investigated it, they were already in Iraq.
I think it was set up as a reason to keep going keep the Iraq thing going. That would have been premeditated and pre-planned.
Of course.
And they needed some excuse or some reason to
Yeah.
do it. 100%.
What's interesting when you really look into it and find that they had basically got, they knew where Osama was on the day that it had happened, and days after. He was in a US military hospital because he was on dialysis
Dialysis or something like that.
Fuck, I can't say these things and not even say what he was actually on. But
If you say it confidently enough, no
and
one
that
will
his
question you.
that they'd flown his family out of New York City a week before the attacks, and it was almost like either he had died before or during this thing had all happened, and that sort of in the videos that were released, he was getting younger and younger as it happened. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
the whole thing just seems like a whole massive fuck up.
There was just a lot of things that just didn't add up. Like, it just
Yeah.
didn't make sense. Like, why is, all of a sudden this happened out of nowhere, or relatively,
Yeah.
and then it's nearly World War III.
Do you think we're in World War III now?
I think, yeah, probably. I think the reason they stopped calling it world wars, like after World War II, there's been a lot of wars afterwards, and it's soon stopped calling world wars because this doesn't end.
World War II didn't end then. Like, basically, it did end.
Like,
but
it ended, but then everything else
it's
that's
a
happened
domino.
afterwards, they're just giving it, it's the Iraq war, it's the Syria war, it's the ISIS war, because it's just that so prolonged and continued that we can't really call it World War III, because then we'll have the whole world in a state of war, and that will shut down the entire world. And obviously the people orchestrating these wars to continue need the world to be functioning.
Yeah, and I suppose it doesn't really just come down to like military warfare, but there's obviously a lot going on with currencies and other bits and pieces. So we're constantly in conflict. Where are we going? Where do you think we're going? Where is this all heading?
There's two ways. There's either globalism, which is just going to be a massive clusterfuck, or everyone just leaves each other alone for a little bit and goes back to doing their own thing. That's not going to happen either. No. So I don't know.
So you want to get, basically, if I were you, I'd give up on everyone going back quietly.
Oh, no, definitely not going to happen. I think, look,
what's the best way in your mind if you could change it now? Well, not change it now, but let's say globalism is where we're going. It's going to be free, open borders, everything like that. What's the best framework for that you would agree to? There is no good framework.
Globalism is not going to work. Like, you can't. That's just going to literally destroy the entire.
How so?
It's going to destroy the society of the world. Like, we need independent countries and independent sovereign states to be able to to keep like economies flowing. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, oh, you know, how much easier would it be if everyone used the US dollar? It'd be so much easier just to go and buy stuff wherever you wanted, and it's the same currency. You don't need to worry about it. But
that currency system is flawed. It's a debt-based currency system,
and that doesn't work, because then you're destroying another country. Because like you need to have competition between the countries for things like trade and production and that sort of thing to keep stuff like actually turning over in the world. And I think that you can't really deviate away from that without creating just one massive dictatorship is basically what's going to be. And you know, they work fantastically, don't they?
Well, I think that's already happening in a shadowy sort of way. I don't necessarily believe that there's a group called the Illuminati and there's one head of it that's running this whole thing, but I do believe that there are multiple groups that have a say above the countries that control certain countries. Now, if you don't think globalism is the correct thing, then what do you think about basically, like, we're still living in this stage of conquering empires and stuff like that, except we call them countries now. I mean, America's got a hold on a lot of places. We're basically, I mean, we're not America, but
we may as well be.
We're closer than most places to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you heard, this is just an unrelated theory, but the idea that obviously war is a way to make money, and it's a way to stimulate everything. It's a trickle-down effect.
100%.
And it will always happen. It will never stop. Let's just say in 100 years' time, it's open borders. Globalism is in 100%. You know, it's all flowing really well. We've got the United Nations. We've got the head of the United Nations, who is now the leader of the world.
Wonderful.
Which is essentially what the United Nations is.
The United Nations is an attempt at global government.
Yes.
And it's just, yeah.
Well, they don't have...
Well, it's useless. It's literally a useless body,
useless. Because
what are they, like, if like you look at their resolution papers and that sort of thing, it's sort of like, oh, we condemn this action.
You don't even need to follow it. You don't,
like,
North Korea don't. George Bush never did when they went to war.
And even when you do sign on to something to follow it, you don't have to follow it anyway. Like, look at
there are no
Paris Agreement.
Paris
Agreement. Donald just pulled out of America's pulled out of the Paris Agreement. So yeah, they signed on to it. Get a new leader and goes, no, I don't really like that one. We won't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, it literally has no effect. And yeah, they can take you to the International Criminal Court or International Court, and they just go, oh, you need to do it. And you can turn around and be like, no.
Remind me to go on to climate change after this, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But what about the idea that once we're in this, world, where do the wars go from there once every country is conquered? And the theory is that that's when
planets,
we turn to Star Wars.
Yeah, 100%, I suppose. Like, if you're going to say that that's what's going to end up happening, I suppose that's probably going to, that's just natural progression, isn't it?
It doesn't feel like a theory. It feels like the most logical thing to happen.
I think definitely, unless someone stops.
And so me and Jared, I just want to preface here, because we've talked about aliens a lot on this show. And I want to preface as well, I romanticize with the idea that there could be aliens out there, but I've also heard the argument that aliens could just be a psyop, and that what they're doing now is through Hollywood, movies, TV, stuff like that. They're creating this slowly through time, putting in our subconscious that there's these other groups of people out there that we are afraid of them. Like, that's what they like to set up, is that we're supposed to be afraid of these people that we don't know, that are different, extraterrestrials. What if they don't exist, and it's just a reason for us to, when it eventually comes, when the time comes, for us to have a war with things that don't exist? Yeah. If it's just a way to keep the system, funding the system.
100%, definitely. But I think I wouldn't call them aliens, but I definitely think there's obviously other life somewhere out there, because if we have a planet that functions like this, there's surely got to be another form of life somewhere.
But I want to entertain every side of the argument.
I suppose that's probably a pretty good...
they might be out there, but what if they don't they might not give a fuck about it. They might go, you guys are fucked, and we don't want war with you. If you want to pretend you're having war with us, cool. If you want to pay us off, we'll send maybe a few down to skis, but we're going to
do our own thing.
Yeah, we don't even live in time.
What if we're a board game for them?
Pardon?
What if we're a board game for them right now?
Well, that's the other theory. Is that all of us, the different races, come from different, different types of aliens.
Clans and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So climate change. What's your theory on that? Because Trump sort of says he believed during the election. I'm not sure what he believes now, but
who knows?
That it's a Chinese
Conspiracy.
Yeah, that it is a conspiracy.
I think that's a bit.
Trump's
far.
quite a conspiracy.
Yeah,
theorist.
100%. I think at risk of sounding like a true conservative-ish person, is global warming. No, I don't really think that's a valid argument. Climate change, sure. The climate's always changing. I mean, we've had how many ice ages, and we're now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think.
But is it speeding? Are we speeding it up?
Well, I think. I think what I.
And why don't you believe in global warming? Because we can't just go over that.
I can't call it. I don't think there's no point in calling it global. Okay, if you're going to call it global warming now, you've got to call it global freezing the next ice age. Mm-hmm. So I don't think global.
But it's not, when they say warming though, they're not necessarily mean that it's just getting hotter. They're saying that it's getting hotter and colder on both. Everything's erratic. But that's what they're saying.
I think. Just call it climate change. Climate is changing. You don't need to give it a buzzword to make it sound more flamboyant, to have yourself more of a victim status or whatever you want to call it. But I think with climate change is, whether you believe a creationist or a religious person or whatever, or evolutionist or whatever, I think everyone can sort of come to the fact that things do happen for a reason, and everything will sort itself out eventually. So whether or not God put everyone here, or whatever religious figure put everyone here and is doing whatever, or it's science doing something, if you look at over time the way that humans have evolved, and how animals evolve and adapt, we evolve and adapt to our climate and to the situation and the surrounds that we're in, and the climate evolves and adapts as well. So I think it's all it's relative.
Do you think, though, on that argument, that maybe it's like with technology? I think technology is evolving faster than the human race, and that's why we've got so many problems with people saying they get depressed because of Facebook. And do you feel if you look back in 2003, we were still we were transitioning from VHS to DVD, and look at us now. It's obviously moving faster than what. But we can keep up with.
Why would it happen faster if it wasn't meant to happen faster?
Okay.
So if it's I don't know, sort of kind of Illuminati type shit, but everything will happen for there's a reason that shit happens. And what that reason is we might not know now, but we'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah. So what are you, a spiritual person? Are you religious? Where do you find yourself sitting in that philosophy section of life?
Religious, not really. I think I don't assign myself to any religion. But I agree, and I do sort of agree that there's something somewhere that does stuff. There's something up there, or something somewhere that's controlling or sending us signals, things to do. I don't know if that's just me being really instinctive, and take instincts, you get a gut feeling that something's gonna be bad, and then it turns out it's bad. So how can you really explain that apart from you can say it's a coincidence, but if it keeps happening, that sort of thing, is it really a coincidence? So I just think there's got to be something doing whatever it is.
So, would Jesus or God, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, Muhammad, is he an extraterrestrial? If he's some sort of higher being of some sort of intelligence, does that mean that he, if you believe in that, then could you argue that?
Definitely, I think you could. I think if we if you look at religion, I think it sort of works back into the whole what we were talking about before about wars and stuff, and that sort of thing, and where it's going in the future. I think religion sort of was the start of it. So who made up religion? If we started because there's so many different ones, it could have just been one bloke who wrote 4 different books about 4 different things that had conflicting ideas.
Well, it definitely wasn't one bloke, because there's religious, But
it could have been like a group of people or something like that. Who said who? How do we know who wrote the Bible? How do we know who actually wrote the Quran? How do we know that sort of stuff? Was it one group of people who who
Yeah, they're just a bunch of blokes with
yeah.
first names.
Yeah,
Luke,
exactly.
Josh,
Yeah,
fucking
exactly.
Matthew, whatever the fuck their names are.
So, who did that, and why is there, how many different religions are there in the world?
Yeah, I mean,
Was that the start of the whole? So that sort of makes the question: is it the start of the whole, idea that we're all going to be in conflict all the time?
do you think that we just appeared here, or do you think that we evolved?
I think it was. I believe more in the Big Bang than in any religious idea.
Okay.
It makes more sense.
Yeah.
It makes more sense that there was a reaction of chemicals of some form that did something. Whether or not it was a bang and actually just then a world appeared, I doubt it. It would have been things occurring over a long
How
period
far
of time.
back can you go though, and who caused?
Yeah, exactly. And what
first
caused
domino?
it? And was it maybe it was a science experiment in an alien classroom gone bad or something like that? Who knows?
That's an actual theory
Yeah,
that's out there, and it's a reasonable one.
Because
Just as reasonable as a god.
how can we know?
God is an ET. If that's what
Well, we weren't here. How do we know?
Yeah. Right. So I suppose where else can we go with this? Do you have any strong opinions on Australian politics right now and where it's at? Do you hold allegiance to any side?
No. I classify myself as a political conservative person, but then at the same time you're not going to pledge allegiance to.
If you could pick anyone right now to run this shit out of the plethora of fantastic people that are in politics now, is there anyone that stands out to you?
I think the Liberal Party did a bad thing by ousting Tony. I think they should have left Tony Abbott there a little bit longer. I think he's probably the most viable on that side of previous people.
Can you see why people think he's an idiot?
Oh,
though?
I can see why people think he's a fuckwit. Yeah, definitely. He's
maybe not necessarily a fuckwit. He's probably you'd have a.
But he has that
view
career,
in-
has that to the general public, because it comes back down to there's informed people and uninformed people. But if you come back down to the reasonable ordinary middle person, they look at him and listen to him speak, and they just go, "What are you talking about?" And they just they just have a dislike to his charisma and his person. I personally
don't think he has any
No.
charisma, and I don't think he sounds smart.
I personally don't have a problem with him.
Yeah.
But the things that he says and that sort of thing, I 100% agree with. But I mean, his articulation's not really the greatest for the ordinary person.
I just look at him and I just see George Bush all over. I just see a guy that, maybe if he could articulate things a bit better, maybe he'd have, his arguments might come across a bit better.
Every time you see him, just think of him sucking on a fucking onion.
Who the fuck does that? But
what,
then again,
what sort of stupid shit were you doing? I'm just going to eat an onion. Fuck.
You just can't have that sort
No,
of
exactly.
weird behaviour, those things running. But then again, I saw Bill Shorten eating a fucking sausage sizzle, and it was this weird, and I'm just thinking, are they all fucking that socially
if you look at it,
disconnected?
100%, you've got to be. They're all, I give them, they're all,
they've been there
they're
for
all
so
reasonably intelligent people, to an extent. But the thing that you get is you got someone who's really intelligent, but they're going to lack social skills.
Yes.
I'm sure they're really, really Malcolm's smart. He's made money. Malcolm Turnbull's made money doing other things, so he's obviously smart. Bill Shorten's got where he is from playing strategically and doing things, so obviously he's smart, but they sort of lack the social skills to turn around and be now this is how I talk to people.
How do you feel about it being just common knowledge that Malcolm Turnbull has investments in the Cayman Islands that are clearly that everyone's got a problem with Trump and his taxes, but sort of that's not. It doesn't seem to be an issue of concern here whether Malcolm Turnbull what he's done with his money.
I think because he did a very good job when he first came into becoming prime minister at discrediting that and blowing that up, sort of sweeping that under the carpet. Because when he first came in, obviously the media try and find dirt, and they found, oh my god, he's got all this money in the Caymans, and he turned around and he said, well, yeah, because it makes sense if I'm governing Australia and I'm making decisions regarding Australia's economic future, it makes sense for me not to have an interest in that economic future. So instead of having all of my money here, if I have, it's bullshit, but and it worked.
Yeah, it did work.
Because he said that within the first month, and the people went, oh yeah, no, fair enough. And it hasn't really come up again. I honestly don't have you're individual person, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
But-
I mean, I don't. If I was a business person, I'm not going to say like don't do it. I mean, if you can find a way to minimize your tax, I do it. Everyone does it.
100%.
But there just seems to be this weird disconnect when we talk about raising taxes and stuff like that, and it coming from someone that's clearly playing that game harder than most people.
Definitely, I think they're not really the right type of people to be arguing for tax reform and economic reform, that sort of thing, when they're like, and like the opposition do a very good job at playing that off as well, going, oh, these like rich people with harborside mansions making all these decisions that's going to impact them and they're going to have to pay less tax, but the middle person's going to have to pay more.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's actually a true statement, I think if like some of it's true, but if like economically it sort of figures out to be roughly the same. So I can see why people have an issue with it, but from an actual economic point of view, it's not really that big of a deal, I don't think.
Do you feel Tony Abbott's going to make a comeback? It's slowly looking like it. It looks like it's going to be the Labor Party all over again.
Tony, yeah, definitely.
It already is.
They sort of, yeah, it already is when they
Corey Bernardi went left and started his own party, but I almost feel like that was an inside job in the sense of the Liberals knowing that either it's going to be One Nation that gets those people, or we can have one of our own start his own party and then have allegiance to the Liberal Party.
Corey did it off his own back, but with a group of people, some cabinet ministers, but not like, I don't think the leaders had any idea, because if you look at like Corey, very, very smart in what he did. He set up, while he was still, before the last election, set up his Australian Conservatives as a organisation group where it was talking about conservative values and doing conservative things.
So he was a think tank.
It was a think tank, yeah. So he said, everyone who's a conservative, he had access to the Liberal Party database, or his staff did or whatever. Everyone who's, conservative person, come and, subscribe to my page, and we can talk conservative things. We can have a think tank, basically. Then gets elected, 4 months later goes, radio, see you later, starting my own party. Exact same name as what my website is. I've already got a membership on my website of 100,000. Send all them membership forms. Very smart idea. What
do you think of like Mark Latham? And because that's an interesting one to me, because as younger I would have thought like, if he was the leader of the Labor Party, then it would be coming from, but it was obviously a conservative side of the Labor Party.
Yeah, so the Labor Party's got two factions, and then
every party's got factions. More than just one two factions.
Absolutely. Like the Liberal Party claimed to have no factions, but quite clearly they do now. But Labor Party traditionally is two factions. You got your left faction and your right faction, and I think Mark Latham came from the right side, and they're traditionally like your unionist people who are there fighting for the workers and that sort of thing. I think that's sort of gone away over time, like similar to the feminism thing, is they got everything that they were out to get, so now there's no really need for it. Because if you look at the unions, like their idea at the start was to get like fair rights and equal, like fair things for workers. They've got all that stuff now, but it's just gone to ridiculous levels. Like if you go to a mine site, you get a flat tire. You can't change a tyre, you have to ring the mechanic and wait for the mechanic to come out and change a tyre, because it's not your job and you're doing someone else's job, or you could get hurt and you could sue them, that sort of thing. So I think that sort of what caused problems there as well. Like, and Mark Latham would have been definitely from that more conservative side. Like he still claims to be left of centre. Openly says that. So I'm not a conservative, I just promote free. I'm not, like he says he's a libertarian who's an activist for free speech.
Right. I've definitely been pushed back and forth. Here's one for you. This is where I stand with Trump now. Because originally, like I said at the start, I was someone that thought, maybe there's a reason I should look into him, and as to, if the media obviously doesn't want him to be in it, then why? I looked into it, and I remember the day he became president, to be totally honest, a few of my friends, we were sitting down, we're like, this is incredible. This is incredible. Like, we had a beer, not to celebrate, but more of, where is the world going to go?
We had celebration beers.
Insanity.
Yeah.
Now I'm more of the opinion that Trump is I think it was just the illusion of two sides. I feel like he was set up by the media because you had Obama, and his thing was change. Well, that literally was it. Change you can believe in. That was his slogan, and it was during that George Bush time where people were the pendulum. When George Bush got up here was very right, and because of the stuff George Bush had done, it had swung the majority of society to go, we want more liberal, left-leaning ideology, because it's obviously gone too far right.
Definitely.
He's won that. Now it's gone the other way again with the Trump, and you've seen so many people come out and want some more conservative values again.
But I think it dropped back to the middle with Donald. He's not really, like, if you look at him, he's not actually a conservative person, like business-wise and economically,
I don't think he's either. I just think he's
a
slightly
moderate.
erratic.
Yeah. That's probably a good way of putting it, yeah.
Which I think scares a lot of people in the higher power structure. I think that's why there's that dismay with him, because he's the type of guy that could do secret deals behind the door, and then at the last minute before he announces it goes, you know what? I changed my mind.
Yeah, no,
and I think that freaks the shit out of them, that he's not as easily bought as other people. So that's why I was like, cool, Donald Trump, like, this guy's crazy and erratic, but this could cause some real shit, and I'd love to see what would happen.
I was entertained with what was going to happen. I was like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But now I'm much more, of the opinion that all he was the strategy they used for Trump was, most people now, statistically, do not believe what the mainstream media say, or they question a lot of it. Everyone knows that there's a bias with mainstream media. Whatever channel you could watch Fox, they'd be reporting on a crime. CNN will be reporting on the same crime, but they have a different angle that they take with it. Everyone's aware of that now. So I feel like they used that information as a way to go, well, what if all along the plan was to get Trump in, and the way to get him in was to make everyone think that the media was against him?
Yeah, I 100%.
To push, because I feel like that would totally work.
Well, if you look at the media, it's definitely them. Because if you look at them, they were all screaming for Trump impeachment until someone pointed out that if you impeach Donald Trump, Mike Pence becomes president.
That was strategic by Trump putting him there.
Oh, definitely, 100%, because there's your actual conservative person.
Yeah.
Mike Pence doesn't believe in gay rights. No. And then when the liberal media heard that, they were just like, oh, shit. We should probably stop pushing this Trump impeachment. Otherwise, everything that we want is kind of not going to happen for a long time.
Yeah. What do you think about the CNN leaks that are coming out at the moment? And what do you think about the Russia thing? That's what
that's all bullshit. That was all, definitely. It was all, cool from the start. You can go, that just doesn't make sense. Why would two countries who, haven't gotten along for a while, or we've been made to believe haven't got along for a while, all of a sudden going to collude and how are they going to, they're going to hack us and do, rig the election? It doesn't make sense.
I think it's rather hypocritical because, I mean, most people know that we have just had major interventions with countries. We've not just influenced, we've influenced over 81 different elections, but not just that. We have gone into countries illegally and bombed the shit out of them. So I think it's rather
to get our political regime in there. Yeah, definitely.
For us to talk about that. When Trump would talk about, and there's obviously, this is going to fucking trigger some people, but when Trump would talk about, you don't want that. You don't want to be a provocateur. You want to be able to have reasonable arguments. I like people like Milo Yiannopoulos. I don't like the way they go about it, because I think that's what's causing...
The provocation needs to spark the debate.
I don't think it needs to be provoked anymore. It's clearly a debate now.
That's true.
What more? We don't need any more. Having riots outside of universities because he says feminism is cancer is not going to move us forward in any way.
No, I think to spark the initial debate of an issue... Yes. Needs to be a little bit of provocation.
Yes, I agree with
that.
Then
that starts the debate, and then it needs to be a balanced argument the whole way through.
Yeah. But the Russia thing, when Trump would say, look, what's so bad about being friends with Russia? Isn't that in everyone's best interest that these two major world, superpowers that are both done terrible things on both sides? If we really knew the shit that America was up to, we'd be disgusted, but at the same time, Russia is I feel like it is polar opposites of the same coin.
Oh, definitely. I think that the whole, sure, I'm 100% positive that they talk. Definitely
they're meeting next week at the G20.
Well, yeah, definitely there's always, but they're always constantly talking to each other, 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's no reason for them to have influenced the election or to change anything like that. They both have virtually the exact same political process. And they want it to stay that way because the way that it is at the moment, both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin can make decisions on their own without other people saying it and make it a law.
I just don't think they both can. Like, if they actually did it, then they would know that there's a massive risk of, it turned into a massive war.
100%. I just don't think they did it at all.
I don't think either country can afford to it. I think America is I can't even get the word out. They're fatigued militarily.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's in Russia's best interest right now. They're still building, and they're going to be they already are a massive superpower.
It just doesn't make sense for it to have happened.
No, and China don't want any involvement.
No,
because
exactly.
Without us, they're not going to be selling fucking TVs, and they're supplying the world.
And that's quite clear through their, like what Donald's been saying to them about the whole North Korea situation. He's trying to push that off onto them, and they're sort of conforming a little bit, but then pushing back a little bit.
What do you think of North Korea?
I think we should not make the same mistake that we made in the Middle East.
No way, not with them.
Definitely not. Don't go
them.
in there. Just they're technologically illiterate.
Yes, they are. Like, they're not a threat,
No.
but they're more of a threat than a bunch of mercenaries with AK-47s.
Like, yeah, sure, they might have nuclear weapons, but if they shoot them,
They can't go anywhere.
they're going to blow themselves up.
Yeah.
That's why they haven't shot a nuclear weapon.
Did you see that one that they tested, and just as soon as it happened, it sort of blew up? And in my head, I was like, they sat there, they knew exactly what was going to happen. And, I mean, America would have some technology to be able to just make sure that never happened.
America's got a whole Navy fleet in Japan.
That's what we know about, though. Like, what the fuck else can they do?
They've got a public fleet there. There's definitely other ones elsewhere. But, I mean, like, they're one of their most shitty boats in their Navy in Japan can launch a missile or something that will wipe out the entire of North Korea quicker than North Korea could turn on their nuclear reactor.
They've got China, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
China. But China don't want that. Now,
No,
my
definitely
theory
not.
with North Korea is I feel like they're just a boogeyman. There's a possibility that North Korea could just be set up, not set up by the West, but sort of, we like to go out of our way to make sure that they're the scary, crazy ones, not Russia or China, even though they could do so much worse, Russia and China. That North Korea are...
They're just like a scapegoat.
A scapegoat, yeah, and they fucked up. They do terrible things and
100%.
But I just don't think they're capable of doing anything. And I think we're living in a time now where, I mean, since 2001, but even the early 90s in the Gulf War, I think most people, like you and I, we understand that what's happening in the Middle East now and this whole terrorism thing, I don't think it's as scary as what they've been trying to make it out to be. No. Yeah, there's going to be terrorist attacks and stuff like that, but
there's terrorist attacks from every religion, everyone.
So. Yeah, and it's obviously just going to keep happening. And I just feel like a bunch of guys with AK-47s is so much less terrifying than a crazy fat dude with
nukes,
with possible nukes.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe it's just to keep this agenda of keeping people in fear to conform to.
Yeah, no, definitely that. Yeah, that like 100% makes sense. I just don't think they're a threat.
All right, moving away from that. So the last thing we haven't really covered, we've covered a lot of topics, which is good. Just give a round off on everything. Gay marriage. Let's do gay marriage, but then also like past that to like trans and whatnot, because I can already tell you've got some crazy shit on that.
Okay, no, I might surprise you. So I only formally sort of came up with this idea like the other week. I was just sitting down, I think I had a few beers, and I was like sitting down and having to think about shit, and I was just like, oh, hang on, we can just blow this off pretty quickly. I reckon, like, because if you look at it in Australia especially, and then most Western countries are very similar in terms of the law, there's no difference between a married couple or a de facto couple or the civil union.
Yeah.
So I reckon just take marriage, the word marriage, out of the law in general.
Yeah.
And have it called whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Just take marriage out of the law and leave it up to the religious institutions to marry you.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If you want to get married, go and find someone who's going to marry you. If you want to get whatever you want to call it, go and find someone who'll do it. Under the law, you're all recognised as the same.
Yeah.
But if you want to call yourself married, go and find an institution that'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best way to solve the problem. Like, you're not giving one group a label that another group can't have. You're giving them all an ability to have the label.
Yeah.
That makes no difference.
It is a label thing.
It definitely is, yeah.
But the argument with that is that, you know, marriage has been around for or that word has been used in connotation with two people being together for such a long time that it's moved out of that religious field and it's in the mainstream. So it doesn't, if anything, it has less to do with religion now
and more to do with tradition.
And more to do with tradition. My whole thing with it is look, I have not heard any gay person with the argument of wanting to change the words in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's not what they're fighting for, I don't think. And I don't think it's the right thing to do to, like you said, it makes sense to just be able to call it like a de facto or a, what is it?
I mean, civil union or whatever they call it.
Civil union or whatever. And I think they can already have a civil union.
Gay people can be called like a civil union or be a de facto couple. But they just can't.
But it's that label that
Definitely.
they feel makes them feel like a second class or a second tier thing, which is fair enough when you account that marriage or the word marriage, people just want to say they're fucking married. That's it. That's really
exactly.
it.
I think like the libertarian in me says like, what you do doesn't affect me. I don't give a fuck really what you want to do. But at the same time, I think it removes, like, if you take the word married out of the law, it removes any discrepancy in terms of the law and inequalities there, and then you leave it up to the institution. Because like if you look at the Catholics, there's more progressive Catholic branches than others. Like, they've accepted gay people to come to their church. They've accepted
except for the Catholic Church,
except for the actual Catholic Church.
Cardinal Pell will fight against fucking gay marriage, but he'll fuck a couple of kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Allegedly,
better put that one in there before you get sued.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if you take the inequality out of the law and then let it, like, there's more progressive arms that are going to get there eventually. We're going to say,
it's clearly going to happen. It's just more of a. Do you think in Australia? I feel like in Australia, like, it is a. I feel like it's just a political. I mean, it's just the conversation's been happening so long that it's so transparently clear that it's being used as a point of argument as to which side you should follow.
Definitely. I think it's more turned into a political argument than anything else.
I don't care. I don't think anyone gives a fuck.
No.
Why would you give a fuck?
I think
who gives a fuck if you get fucked up the ass or whatnot?
Do it in your own bedroom. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in love, then good for you, because I'm lonely as shit right now, and I would just, you know what I mean?
Same, and I think I'm going to be for a little bit longer after that article.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a political thing, and I think, you know, it's the whole thing about, like what I said before, about pushing people, like doing like hardcore causes, pushing people away. I think the Labor Party in Australia did a really bad thing by opposing the plebiscite, because if they had a plebiscite 6 months ago, their argument is like, not a compulsory vote, doesn't get a bloody whatever.
Yeah.
But when it's not a compulsory vote, you've got your two extremes fighting against each other. 6 months ago, the extreme for gay marriage was significantly outweighed the extreme against. But since they sort of blocked that and had arguments about it and it's got more extreme, I think it's probably close to 50-50 now.
Oh, I wouldn't say 50-50. Like, I would still say the majority swings on people going. But I understand what you're saying, where I think the percentage of people being against it has probably increased a little bit more.
And then, I think it's because the people who didn't give a fuck have decided that they're sick of hearing about it, so now they care.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, okay, where do you see yourself? Like, you're obviously politically motivated. You're studying law and commerce.
Yep.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself? Do you want to get involved in politics? Do you feel like the system that we're in now is the system that you want to be involved in, or do you want to change the system that we're in? Like, what do you want to do? Why did you want to come on here today?
Just to talk some shit.
Yeah. But when, like, obviously this is the beginning of something for you. I mean, do you want to be a public speaker in this stuff? Where is it going?
I mean, I don't really make too many plans. I just do stuff spontaneously and just like let it take me where it takes me. But like I'm not opposed to going into politics. I'm not opposed to that. But then again, can you make more of a contribution in the business world than not? In terms of, I think for me, like, since the response that I got from what I wrote, that was obviously quite provocative, what I wrote, and the response from that is sort of brings, and a lot of people, I've had like so many people messaging me saying, oh, I've got the same opinions, I've just been too scared to speak out about it. So I think for me going forward, it's going to be like a matter of pushing for like open debate about things, and having people have a forum where, you know, you can go and you can speak about, or, you know, we can have a debate about whatever argument you want, and you're not going to get attacked personally, because that's like the biggest hypocrisy with those sort of movements, is we're going to attack, we don't want to be attacked personally, but we're going to attack you personally if we don't agree with you. I think it needs to be an attack on the argument. I think there needs
Fighting
to be,
fire with fire.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work. So I think it's more of a, you know, giving people like hope that they can speak out without getting vilified.
Yeah. So you wrote this is sort of the catalyst. You wrote your article, which we'll link down below.
Thanks.
Was it that feminist one that you shared with me? Was that the exact same article? Okay.
Yeah, I put a Pauline Hanson one up today just to pull in the piss this morning. So that'll be there too.
So you obviously had a reaction to that. Now, if this is the path that you're going to go down, did you have any like what was it like? You obviously had people talking shit about you.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
But
how are you going to deal with that? How's your skin? Is it thick already?
I just
well,
don't
that's
give a
a bit
fuck.
fucking.
I just don't give a fuck. Like, that's the thing.
You don't give a fuck?
No. See, like,
or do you not know that you don't give a fuck?
No,
yet?
I just don't.
Okay.
Like, you can say whatever you want to me. Like, I'm just the type of person who, like, I've always been. I'll cop it. Like, like that's like, because I was such a smart ass at school.
Yeah, well, I know.
Because like I was such a smart ass.
Story.
You've got to give shit out. But if you're gonna dish shit out, you got to be able to cop it. And I think like me being such a smart ass taught me to cop a lot of it, and sort of grew thick skin through that. And like now I'm just like, well, yeah, obviously that my opinions are very controversial, and like I said, big believer, like everything happens for a reason. Like that might have closed every possibility of me getting a professional job in, like, say, accounting or law or something. But
I don't think so. Not
I
yet,
don't think
but
it
be
will,
ready
but
for it.
Yeah. Like there'll be obviously be some form of backlash or something.
I'll never get a job again.
Yeah, probably. But you got a good enough job doing this yourself. So like there'll always be, that's my point. Like something will create. Yeah. Like I might have closed a door in a professional service firm doing that, but I've opened a door in writing for conservative papers or free speaking and that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, all I'm going to say is I'll end it on this. Be ready, because I think you're just getting a taste of it now.
I think come and get me.
Come and get ya.
Come and get me.
All right, mate. Be ready for it.
We can debate.
I'm telling you, mate. Good on you. One, like,
thank you.
No one needs to agree or disagree with what you're saying. I think it's extremely
100%.
important that everyone
You're
has a
entitled to your
view
own
on
opinion.
something. Yet you're entitled to your opinion, and you should voice your opinion 110%, right? And it's okay to disagree and agree with people on certain things, and your opinions will always change. But good luck. I mean, I hope that I see some crazy shit from you. I'd love to see you cause a riot at a university.
We'll see how it goes.
It'll help the views on this show.
Yeah, exactly. Like the big thing that I always say is, you know, we live in Australia. You have the right to your opinion, but I also have the right to disagree with your opinion.
Exactly. That's free speech. All right, Nick, thanks for coming on the show.
Not a problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.